Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Bookum Nook Show. My name is Kyle Colley and this is an episode of Founders Talk, a podcast for founders to tell their stories, ideas, and visions of the future. Make sure to like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and download the Bookum app to catch all our great conversations, to start your own book club and connect with your favorite book content creators. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce my guest today, Mrs. Loida Lewis. Miss Loida is a lawyer, an activist, a philanthropist, and a wife of the late and great Reginald Lewis, one of the world's wealthiest Black entrepreneurs. She is the author of Why Should Guys Have All the Fun, a memoir of her life, and the follow-up book to Mr. Lewis's groundbreaking book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun. She is a Filipino-American born businesswoman, the chair of the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation, a mother, and a business icon. Loida, welcome to the Founders Talk podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Kyle. It's an honor to be with you.
The pleasure is mine. I would love to kind of start hear about your life, your upbringing in the Philippines, and what were some key moments that shaped your life?
My father being orphaned when he was 12, and in the Philippines, as many poor family, you send your son, your daughter to a rich relative, and so from the time he was in high school, he went to live with a rich relative. There, he's got the idea that when he grows up, he also would be a business person dealing with businesses. And so as we were growing up, we were already, middle class, upper middle class. We had the biggest, the largest, not home, but business establishment, almost half a block, where we had a movie house named after me. We had a bowling alley, we had a pool table, we have a gasoline station, we have a lumber yard, and then my father was starting a fish pond. I mean, so many other things. So with that, an entrepreneurial spirit, and every weekend my father would start value training. I call it brainwashing now, but it really is. Values. What are the 5 secrets of success? And he does not wait. We know the answer, but he doesn't wait. He says it himself. First, hard work. And then he will give an example of how hard he worked. Second, resourcefulness or common sense. And then he will give an example where a situation is there, you use your common sense. Third is determination. So he'll give an example where, he had to do this and he had to do that and never saying no. Fourth is thrift. Thrift is really money management, what's called financial literacy, because he said, you may work and work and work, but you don't know how to save money, you don't know how to invest, then, at the end of the day, you have nothing because you have spent more than you earned. And the fifth is faith in God. And so those are the 5 things that formed me and has been, it's almost like a North Star, as you would say, or a grounding that has helped me overcome a lot of highs and lows in life.
So that's a beautiful way of putting things together and kind of creating, like you said, that brainwash or just that foundation as a way of life, right? And if I'm not mistaken, you also were the first Filipino woman to pass the bar in New York without attending a law school. So just tell me about that as well.
All right. So with that such a father, it's always do your best. Okay, be ambitious. So I was class salutatorian in elementary school, class valedictorian in high school, cum laude in college, number 7 in our class, graduating class. And then, because I passed the bar, my father sent me on a round-the-world trip, and that's where I met Mr. Lewis. And I fell in love.
Yes.
And married. And I gave up all of my ambition in the Philippines because I found the man. So when it was in 1973 announced by the Supreme Court that you do not need American citizenship to take the bar examination, I immediately applied. And why did I accept my College of Law, University of the Philippines degree? Because in 1908, the University of the Philippines was established by American government. We were a colony of the American government, and we copied the University of the Philippines College of Law, copied all of our subject matter from American law school. And so it's equivalent to studying in the Philippines, law school, UP, University of the Philippines, is equal to studying in an American law school. So when I applied and submitted my UP College of Law, they accepted me. I studied hard like the Dickens, and I passed. And so I consider myself the first Filipino woman, because there's another Filipino man, graduate of UP College of Law. We passed at the same time in 1974. So without going to law school, took the bar and passed.
I love that story. And also, I'm curious about, I read in the Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? You all had like mock trials in your family. So you all would just practice. Can you talk a little about that? I think that was such an interesting story.
When the children were growing up, we have two daughters, Leslie and Christina. And during the dining table, because we were living in Paris then, Mr. Lewis had bought Beatrice International, 64 companies in 31 countries. So we lived in Paris because that's where his companies, many of the companies were located. So after dinner, Mr. Lewis would start, all right, it's not really a trial. It's, what do you want? Math, history, or literature? And Christina was like 6 years old. And Leslie was like, in high school. And so they have to choose. Do you want to be questioned on math, literature, or history? So it's like, it's like, what is that now? Trivial Pursuit. There was a game.
Oh yeah, Trivial Pursuit, yes.
Trivial Pursuit. Okay, so right on the dining table. And so, Mr. Lewis would ask them a question appropriate for their age level. And you have to answer. You have to answer.
And it was I love the way it was quick-witted. It would make sure your argument was sound. It was a little bit of everything. I would love to kind of talk for you to take us back to, I believe it was 1968 when you all first met. Just talk about from your perspective that night when you and Mr. Reginald Lewis met. I'd love to hear that.
All right. It was a blind date.
Yes.
My was dating my sister, who was taking masters at Columbia University. So on Friday, he said, Loida, why don't we do a double date? His sister and me, and I'll introduce you to my classmate. I didn't know who. And, coming from the Philippines, blind date, I've never had that. So, always be ready for adventure. Sure. And that's how I met Mr. Lewis. And from the very beginning, we already had a sort of like good chemistry, because he's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, although he didn't know that. I told my boss I'm only a law student. You do it with guile. Well, yes, it's a little white lie, but I want to work as an administrative assistant. So that's how we met. And of course, Mr. Lewis, 26 years old, just out of law school, working in law office. We went to what's called West Bundock's. It's a soul food restaurant.
Okay.
Soul food restaurant. So I ordered what I considered in the Philippines, crispy pata or ham hocks. That's very Filipino.
Yes.
And they all ordered fried chicken. But I was impressed because he ordered champagne. Champagne, not beer or Coca-Cola or, So it was a very good first meeting.
Yes. And then what traits stuck out from that first meeting?
In the very beginning, I was going to talk about, something that concerns the Black community. Maybe, I can't remember now, but probably Joe Louis, because he was the first Black boxing champion. He immediately set it aside. I'm international. Meaning to say, don't deal with me as a Black man. I'm international. And sure enough, 20 years later, he bought Beatrice International Foods, 64 companies in 31 countries. So what did he tell me on that first day? He doesn't want to be dealing with me, with race as part of our relationship. Number one. Number two, very ambitious. I'm international. I mean, he just graduated, he's working in New York. Although he has been to Europe, because Harvard Law School on your second year offered a round-trip ticket to Paris on a chartered plane for $200. And so he has gone to Europe. So in his mind, he already was dreaming big. So that was, that was those were some of the things. Ordering champagne when you're just just
Yes.
new minted lawyer, thinking big, thinking international, and also, very universal. We talk about all things, and whatever I said, he had something to contribute. Whatever he said, I have something to contribute.
Yeah, and I was just, when you're talking, it's so awesome to just hear that connection, just like that international relationship and seeing different worlds and understandings. I'm curious to hear how his business leadership evolved over time, from when you first met to later on to buying some of the biggest companies in the world. I'm just interested in that.
All right. So Mr. Lewis was ambitious because when he was the last year in Harvard Law School, his term paper where he got honors grade A+ was about merger and acquisition. And his first sentence there, in order to achieve wealth, you've got to do merger and acquisition. He didn't say you've got to be a lawyer. He didn't say you've got to be a doctor. He said merger and acquisition. And eventually I understood, because when you buy a company, when you merge your company with something else, basically buying a company, you already have a ready-made business. You start the business, you have to get customers, you have to get capital, you have to get, so many things. Whereas if you buy a business, there it is, ready-made. Your goal is not just to get it, your goal is how to increase value. How do you increase your income? How do you reduce your expenses? How do you get whatever you're selling, promoted to the whole world now? So that was the key to creating wealth, merger and acquisition. And so, although he was a very successful practicing lawyer, always at the back of his mind, buy a company. Not start a company, but buy a company.
Yes.
And he did try.
And he did a great job too. Bought a lot of good company.
No. For your readers, remember, he failed the first time. He failed the second time. He failed the third time, 3. And that's why, Mr. Lewis is really just special. He did not say, oh, forget it. No. He said, instead of saying, because they are racist. No, that's true. But he didn't use an easy excuse. Oh, everybody's racist. I'll not. No. He said, I failed 3 times. I am doing something wrong. You point, oh, racist. Oh, discrimination. No. You're doing something. If you fail 3 times, other people succeed. You're doing something wrong. And so that's how he recovered. He started reading all the mergers and acquisition that was happening. It's almost like a book, okay, yes. Like a story. And then he understood, what are they doing that I wasn't doing? Mr. Lewis was his own lawyer, was his own investment banker, was his own accountant. So nobody was invested in his work. And so the next time, McCall Pattern Company, that's when he hired Paul Y. No, he hired a lawyer, not his law firm. He hired, I think it was Deloitte & Touche, and then investment banker, Phyllis Less. So that's how he got it together.
Yes,
so, so please, for your readers, oh, he's so successful. He had no failures. No, failed 3 times.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the book is right in that moment you're talking about, and he's like, I'm not ready. I wasn't ready. I think that's the thing he kept saying in his mind, right? Like, I wasn't ready. I need to get ready, right? And so many times in life, that's kind of how it is. Like, we believe we're ready for that opportunity, but sometimes you have to stumble and fall a lot so you can build the type, like you said, the callus or the brainwashing to know that you can become the person who you're meant to be.
Yes, for every failure, learn from it. You're doing something that's not quite right, okay? Or sometimes that's not meant for you. But, you have to do your own self-examination.
Yeah. So one of the things that also stuck out to me was how he was able to balance life and business. Because so many times you see a lot of business, or when I say family life and business. Because so many times you see business leaders that tend to just get really big but neglect their family. But it just seemed like from the story, you all had a really tight family. So I would love to kind of hear how you were able to achieve that, or how that worked.
Well, his mother left his father when he was 5 and went to live with his grandmother and grandfather, who had 8 children and adopted 2 more. So he had 10 uncles and aunts, and they were all working. And so from that young age, he understood family is important. It's very important. And family tradition is important. So every Christmas, we would have exchange of gifts in the morning, and then we'd go to Baltimore for his mother and, have the Christmas dinner that his mother prepares 1 week in advance. And then we would visit his grandmother and grandfather. So that tightness kept him very, very rooted. Okay, so that's one. Secondly, he never missed. Okay, as busy as he was, he flies to Europe and this, but if his children have something like parent-teacher, like open house, or like a drama, he is there. He never missed any of the children's activity. So how did he balance it? Priorities. Family. Not that he had to stay home. He knew he had to earn a living. But certain things in family, asking the children, what are you doing in school now? All right. Being home, not all the time. He was out hustling. But when he's home, especially when we moved to Paris, dinner time was dinner time. He was there.
Yes. And so I'm also curious about during those stressful times, right? So during the time when you were the McCall pattern deal or the Beatrix days, how did you all handle stress, and what kept the family together during those tough days?
Well, I always had faith in him. And so one time he was saying this and he was saying that. And I said something, innocuous, not really important. And I guess he just snapped at me. You don't know anything about the deal business. And he said, I don't know anything, darling, but I know you. I know you can do it. So for a wife, especially he's African American with all of the prejudices and bigotry and discrimination, the wife has to be very supportive. I always tell this to my friends, and when I talk, he's out there slaying dragons and monsters of bigotry and discrimination. When he comes home, what? You're late. What kind of welcome is that? Yes. Your husband or your boyfriend will leave you. When he comes home, darling, have you eaten? You want a massage? How was your day? You have to be caressing. You have to be loving. You have to, soothe him and not go into his self-flagellation. Oh, yeah, that was stupid to say. No, you don't say that. You say, oh, darling, he deserves it. Whatever, F-U-C-K, he deserves it. Support your man. But the pressure on him is relentless. So when he comes home to an oasis.
There you go. And in that partnership, at the end of the day, it's like we help each other. The unit, the family is what is most important, because then, as you said, you can go out and slay these dragons, whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, anything that comes up, you're able to do that as a family, and you draw from that. So I that always was one of the key stories in the book that always just was really impressive to me, just that family unit that you all had.
Those who are married or who has a good relationship, you are a team. Okay. And as a team, you've got to understand each other and have a plan. You have a plan. It's not she has a plan and he has a plan, then you're going to, you're going to stay. You're a team. In basketball, football, any other game, your teammates and you have to be tight with a goal together.
Yes. And speaking of basketball, one of the things you also do is you celebrate, right? And one of the things that I really enjoyed was the story of the raindrops. Like I think Reginald Lewis would always say raindrops when raindrops keep falling on my head reference. What were some of those other memorable sayings, phrases that Reginald Lewis used to say? I know another one was the make lemonade out of lemons. So just curious about some of those.
Yes. Well, raindrops, because we saw Butch Cassidy and the
Yep.
Sundance Kids. Okay, raindrops falling on your head. We both loved it, and so when something good happens, he calls me on the phone, Loida, raindrops, raindrops, and so we know that he has achieved it. You know, little things like that, celebration, and what else? Of course, the most important is keep going no matter what. And the poem by Langston Hughes. I've been climbing it. No crystal stairs.
Yes.
Got tacks in it, and holes. Meaning to say, everybody says, "Oh wow, he reached so high." Going up was rough. It was rough. So keep going no matter what. That's one of the things that I love him say. Now, when I do something good, I love to hear it. Babe, go on with your bad self.
That was good.
I love that. I love that. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the love of art and how that came into business and how Reginald Lewis was able to morph that in, and then just in general, some of you all's favorite art pieces of art would also be.
Well, Mr. Lewis also not only music, not only rap, not only reggae. Or Mr. Lewis loved, Count Basie, Louis Armstrong, all of the black artists. But he listened also to Maria Callas, to opera, the arias. He loved that too, especially Maria Callas. So he is very well-rounded. But when he could not afford, he loves art. So what did he buy? Postcards from MoMA, postcards of Vincent Smith, postcards of Picasso, poster. So he had that. So when he was able to afford it, he bought the Picasso. He bought Vincent Smith. He bought Ed Clark and many other black artists. Hale Woodworth, Woodruff. What's his name? Anyway, we're surrounded by African American and Cubist art.
Oh,
but
wow.
It's not like he started it. He bought postcards, and he's always in his office, so that close to the window, it got rained, so some of them are a little crooked. And when he was able to buy the original, he bought. You have to surround yourself with beauty.
Yes, because it brings the world. It kind of goes back to what we were earlier talking about. It brings that world view. You get to see things from all types of perspectives, artists from around the world. It brings it, and then because building a business in a lot of ways is a piece of art, right? And the way you build it and show it to the world is your gratitude to the world that you live in.
Yes, yes, yes. But from the early on, because his mother, his grandmother are always giving, So when we first got married, Christmas, $10 to the church of his mother, $10 to Harvard Law School, $10 to New York Times, neediest. So there was always, Christmas time, and when the children were growing up, he would give the check for Christina to deliver Mother Hale. And we were in Paris to the American Library because we use it all the time. So there is always in Mr. Lewis' mind the generosity. You share whatever you have, you share. And in the Christian Jewish tradition, 10% you give away. Tithing, it's called.
Yes. And speak, because you were talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I remember in the book they talked a little bit about future things that Reginald Lewis was thinking about getting into or buying, and one of them was a movie studio with Paramount and all that. Can you talk a little bit about that, or even this, like the Baltimore Orioles? I knew there are some things in there. I would be excited to hear that.
Well, okay. So as he said, to create wealth, you buy a company, merger and acquisition. So his first successful one is McCall Pattern Company. And for those who are buying, he said that's his best work. He did everything that he learned at Harvard Law School. So from an investment of $1 million, it's borrowed money. Who accumulate $1 million? And that was the down payment that was required for the McCall Pattern Company. He borrowed it. Because how will he pay it? Because when you are the sponsor of a deal, you found the deal, you got it together, you got financing, and you close the deal, it's called the sponsor fee. All of these deal makers get a sponsor fee. And so that's how he paid that $1 million. And he sold it with a 90-to-1 return for 1 million, 90 million return. And that's when he went and bought Beatrice International Foods. And again, you will say, oh, he did it all by himself. No. For 5 years, he was creating a relationship with Mike Milken of Drexel Burnham Lumber, who was an investment banker who helps people, especially Henry Kravis and other, you call it LBO, leverage buyout artist. You know, he would be the investment banker to put the deal together. And he befriended Mike Milken, and that's how he was able to come into that inner circle, bidding, who the hell is TLC Group? And Mike Milken told Henry Kravis, he has credibility with me. I am with him. And that's how that very tiny, very tight group of leverage buyout artists was open to Reginald Lewis. $1 billion deal. That was 1987. And sadly, I have not heard of any African American buy a company of more than 1 billion.
Yeah, well, there's a new generation, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, this new generation is into something else, like Robert Smith. All right, he started with Goldman Sachs, and then he knew, because that was 1994, he knew the power of the computer and software. And so while he was at Goldman Sachs, he saw so many software companies have a lot of cash, but it's not being invested properly. And that's how he started. Okay, got one of these software company gave him 200 million to start buying companies, software. So now he's the true billionaire.
Yes.
Many others. There are many others.
Yes. Yeah, I'm from Denver, Colorado, so I'm really familiar with Robert Smith's story and just what he's been able to do. And that, I mean, that's what it's about too. Is like when you see those stories and you say those are inspirations. Whether it's Robert Smith, Reginald Lewis, where you say, yeah, why should white guys have all the fun? How can we be the type of people to make those opportunities open for everybody?
It did not start when they were 50 years old or 45. It started when you are young. So for those who are listening, who have, a young son or a young daughter who are very ambitious, so channel them, because it starts the habit of hard work, the habit of perseverance, tenacity, common sense, money management. All right. You know how to budget, because if you earn 1,000 and you spend 1,500, you'll never make it. You're always be in debt. All right. And faith in God. I do believe that you have to have faith, whether you are Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever religion you have to have somebody outside of you that cares about you. So faith in God, whatever name you call him, is necessary.
Yeah, and one of the things that always brings me to tears when I read the book is just that untimely death. I'm curious to hear how you all were able to persevere during those times, and you as a business leader take over and help and take over the company as well.
Well, for those whose husband or wife died, somebody so close to you, so suddenly, I mean, I was catatonic. I was out. I was out. I couldn't deal with his death being so sudden, because New Year he was diagnosed with brain cancer after an autopsy. I mean, after a biopsy, and then he was dead in 3 weeks. So how did I deal with it? I dealt with it. I dealt with it. I cried. I bowed. I was not myself. But I am so glad that I am Christian, because I know God will not abandon me. I know that although Mr. Lewis is gone, he is there rooting for me. And so that kept me steady. It's almost like I'm reaching out, Lord, help me, help me, help me. And then it's almost like God hold my hand and lifted me up. So for those who are in the throes of disaster or pain or loss of a loved one, yes, stay with, it's natural to weep and to bawl and to cry, but there is always hope. You will stand up. You will get on, not to lose faith, because eventually the sun will come out tomorrow.
I love that. And yeah, just yeah, it's just sad. And then the way I'm glad you speak about it from a spiritual, standpoint, and having faith and grounded root in something, because it just takes you out, and you just hear that. So just to have that faith that brings you back and lift, like you said, lifts you back up, is just a beautiful thing to have in your life.
The Psalms always have something so appropriate. Tears may fall in the night, but joy comes in the morning.
Right. That's good. I'm interested also in hearing about your leadership style as well. When you had to kind of take over and help in the business as well. Like how was your business style, and was it different from Mr. Reginald Lewis's, or how that worked?
Of course, very different. Mr. Lewis is material. You will get a whole blast of FUCK and MF and things like that when things are not going well. So, but he was effective. And he cares about his people. So even if, his secretary gets all of this, curses and things like that, they stay with him. They stay with him because they know he's got a good heart. So with me, I was very clear because Mr. Lewis has said it. Okay? The company has to succeed. This is the company that will create wealth for his family, for our family. And so when I saw that the company was going down, we couldn't meet payroll, income, it rained. 50% of the business was ice cream. And that summer after he died, it rained in Spain and Germany and France and Norway and Italy. Really, really, really bad. So in my mind, you don't need to be a rocket science, to understand your income is low. Your expenses are high. Cut expenses, increase income. So that's what I did. Reduce the rental of 32,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. Employees in the corporate office was 32 employees. So out. I had to give I spoke to every single one of them and gave them very generous pay. So I cut it to just 10 employees. And then airplane, 3 million a year, 3 million a year, first to go. Limousines, we don't need limousine, go. So in just from a red of, first year, 1 million net income, 5 million net income. Next year, 9 million net income. The fourth year, I cut expenses. I started selling, and then I have 15 million. And in the seventh year, I sold everything and got $1 billion back. Paid the debt, 350 million that was left by Mr. Lewis, leverage buyout. Pay that when I sold from Prix and Leader Price, the French company in France, and then sold everything and got no debt, zero debt, 1 billion back.
So, wow. And that was the record high of earnings, correct?
Yes, I increased it to $2.2 billion in sales.
Wow. And then as we start to wrap up, I would love to hear about the Reginald Lewis Foundation, some of the initiatives and impacts that it's had.
Yes, well, as I said, the art of giving. He started very young because that's his how he saw his grandma and his mother. He would tell me that, if there was a piece of bread left over, his grandmother would give it to anyone who knocks on the door. So he would always give. And his first big donation was Harvard Law School, because it was like his good housekeeping, because, he came from Virginia State and entered law school. And that's also a good chapter in his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? How he was accepted at Harvard Law School without applying, because he was at the summer program. Okay, for those who do not know, that's the book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And so, as I was saying, he's giving. So he gave Harvard Law School $3 million in 1990. Nobody has given $3 million. So they named a building named after him, Reginald Lewis International Law Center. So that's how he returned the free tuition he got. And they, in fact, they gave him a loan of $1.5 thousand without him applying. So how is other, whereas other universities show us your income, show us this, show us that before they give a scholarship. Harvard Law School, here's $1.5 thousand. You need it for, to stay, to expenses, things like that. That's why he gave $3 million. And then before he died, $1 million to Howard University. And he's not even a graduate of Howard University. So those are the things, you have to give.
Yes. And that whole, towards the end of the book, there's so many of those things that happen. And so many of ones where it was not talked about. Just from everything you could think of, just the amount of philanthropy was just really great to hear. And a lot of it was behind the scenes, no media or anything. So it's incredible to see the giving and the heart that Mr. Reginald Lewis had.
Yes. Since his founding in 1987, on his 80th birthday, we celebrated it at Harvard Club. And we figured out how many has the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation given up. 35 million. Well, it's very small. We are a small company, a small foundation. But in the course of 30 years, we have given out $35 million. 35 million in 35 years.
Yes. Yes, I love it. As we wrap up, I'm interested, and this will be my last question. Just what stories do you still hope are told about Mr. Reginald Lewis and your family?
In our family, how he loved to hear jokes. You think, he's all very serious. He would laugh at jokes, especially when said by his daughter, Leslie. And growing up, he has 5 brothers and sisters, the children of Mom, Mrs. Carolyn Fugit, and Jean Fugit, Butch, we call him, his stepfather. He would be very, very, what do you call it now, careful, because he loved Nabisco crackers and potato chips wise. And so he would have this, and he would hide it somewhere. And invariably, his brother and sister will find it. So it's always a source of joy for the brothers and sisters, how they would be able to get to the secret spot of all those favorite food that Mr. Lewis liked when he was a teenager.
Yes. And one of the last story that always had me laughing was it's got to be the car. Or I think it's
my daughter Leslie. Mr. Lewis always loved to buy, in his mind, a sports car, Mercedes-Benz top-down 400 SL. And so with Leslie, 7 years old, we bought our first house, a 3-bedroom house in East Hampton. And so with a top-down, Leslie and Mr. Lewis would be on Main Street. And then there were 2 young women, good looking, who was ogling at the car, Mr. Lewis and Leslie. And then, of course, Mr. Lewis sort of like, Okay, they're looking at me. And Leslie brought him down. Dad, it's the car. Your children will keep you humble.
Yeah, that's how it has to be. I thank you, Miss Loida, again, for just taking your time out of your day to talk with us. Please let us know where to get your book, as well as anything else that you'd like to share.
All right. Well, at the end, March 26th, my audio book, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun, will be out. So for those who are busy, going from here to there or cooking or things like that, and you like to listen, well, I read it myself. So
Yes.
for those who have not yet bought the book, you should buy it. It will inspire you. Then the audiobook is coming out March 26th. In fact, you can even order it ahead of time.
Wonderful.
You can order it from Spotify, from all of the channels of media, and of course, Amazon.com, Audible.
Yes, we'll make sure to put it in all the videos and share it out to our newsletter. Thank you again so much, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
God bless you, and God bless everyone.